Begin the current Daf, Mesech the Sotah Daf Tezvav. Begin on the bottom line, the last word on Daf Yudalim and Beis, with the Gemara in the middle of explaining the halacha of our previous Mishnah, which was contrasting the way we bring, that was the title of this parak, Yomei, starting in the previous Daf, Es Menchasa, how you bring the Minchas Sotah, differently than all of the Menachos, and the Gemara brought a Braisa that said, okay, say the Menachos Ketzad, how do you do normally a mincha? And we were contrasting, and the Gemara continues to explain that Braisa of how a mincha is generally brought. Something discussed in today's daf are, like I said, the distinction between the Minchas Sotah and other menachos and other flower offerings. The halacha of how maybe pile shacheres, that they used to bring this earthenware type of vessel, but so then they would fill up the water from the water basin that was there in the Azara, because this was the drink she had to drink, which was taken from that water. The machlekes regarding kais yashan and regarding shar meimos, regarding what was the halacha, what could it be an old vessel, and regarding how about other waters. Halacha nisan afar kadei shiur alamayim, you have to put on the dust, the dirt, that you could see the water has to be that it could be visible on the water itself. Machlekes whether bekarka mishkan, the offer must be placed on the actual ground of the heichel, or mesakami b'chutz, and umachnes, where is this earth actually taken from? If let's say you don't have on the heichel floor, do you have to actually put it on the floor or not? So we begin the current Daf Yudalim Beis, bottom line of the Amid. We were in the middle of explaining the distinctions between the other menachos and the minchas of Sotah. So the Gemara says in the Braiso, Maleyu, you would bring it up as we continue to the top of Tezvav Med Alf, Maktiroi B'kli Sharis, and you would sacrifice it in the service vessel. So just the wording of the Braiso, the Gemara finds difficult. B'kli Sharis Maktile, is it really in the service vessel that you burn it? I mean, you're not going to actually burn the actual vessel in the fire and the mizbech. So Ela Imra says the Gemara, no, Maleyu B'kli Sharis Lehaktiroi, meaning they would bring it up, the mincha, in the service vessel, to then go ahead and be maktir. Rashi has a different girsa, that the Gemara's question was, umaktire sakadaitach? You think that you're going to be burning it? Not that otu b'kli sharis maktirle. And the Gemara's question was, you think you're going to burn it? But you didn't even salt it yet. The end of the brisa says, umolcha, you salt it and you put on the fires. So obviously right now is not when you're burning it. So the Gemara is answering Maleyu like tira b'kli sharis. In other words, that you're going to bring it up in the service vessel to then burn it after it's salted, but it's not actually being burnt right now. Be that as it may, the Brisa continues. It says that you would go ahead and salt it and put it on top of the fires. It says in the pasuk in Vayikra, it says v'chol korban minchascha, and all the carbon of your flour offerings. So you go ahead and you salt it with salt, etc. So the Brisa says, I mean that was just the source of that halacha that you have to salt the flour offerings. Once the fistful is burnt, so then the leftovers are eaten. Says Gemara, where do you know that from? The Chassidus says the pasuk in Yikr. It says the kohen is going to burn what's recalling it, which that's the kaimitz. And then it says after that, the leftovers from the flour offering, it's for Aaron and his sons. So again, these are all just bringing the sources of the brisa, what's done by normal mincha. Now, the Gemara explains, when the fistful is sacrificed, which we said in the brisa that it permits the leftovers to be eaten, when is it considered that the kaimitz was already sacrificed to permit the leftovers to be eaten? So the Gemara explains, Lamar, according to Rabbi Yechanan, is Kedei the way he holds is when the fire is taken hold of the majority of the kaimitz. Well, Lamar, according to Rabbi Chanina, is Kedei the way he holds when it has taken a hold of it, even just a little bit of it. Because we learned it's a machlekes regarding what does it mean, karav hakaimitz, that the shayim are permitted. Hakaimitz, be'imasei matishar mechilo, regarding the fistful, when does it permit the leftovers to be eaten? Chanina, he says, mishatishli b'ha'or, when the fire takes a hold of the kaimitz. Rabbi Yechanan says, when the fire takes hold of the majority. So again, just there are two different opinions regarding what does it mean that it was sacrificed to permit the leftovers to be eaten. Then the Brisa continues and says, the Kahanim are permitted to put into their part of the mincha wine, oil, honey. Says Ibn Maitem, what's the reason? Because Amakra, it says in the pasuk Lamashcha, by the Matnas Kahuna in Bamidbar Yudches, it says L'chod Nesatim Lamashcha. To you, the Kahanim, I've given it as an anointing. What does that mean? Like gedula, meaning like some type of a greatness. The way kings normally eat, which they make it very nice with enrich it with all these other ingredients. Therefore, that's how the Kahanim are allowed to eat their shirayim. Now, the Brisa said the only problem they're not allowed to do with the shirayim is they cannot leaven it. It cannot make it chametzik. The Chesed says in the pasuk, it cannot be baked chametz. Chelkam. Now, the way this pasuk is normally read is that leisa of chametz should not be baked chametz. Chelkam nesati yisam ishay. Their portion I've given to them from my fire offerings. But Amr B'Shim B'Lakish, he says that what the way the pasuk you could read it is afila chelkam. Even their portion, the shidayim leisa of chametz should not be baked chametz, because we darshan that the word chelkam goes on the words before it, also on leisa of. So although really there's a comma leisa of chametz, kama, chelkam, etc., but you create a loisa b'chametz chelkam, that even their portion should not be baked as chametz. Now, going back to the halacha, the Mishnah, as we said, the distinctions between the other menachas and the minchas seite. So the Mishnah said, kol menachas v'chulu, all flour offerings require shemen and levaina and frankincense, and this one doesn't require not shemen, not levaina. Says the Gemara, v'chol menachas tuna shemen levaina. Is that really so that all flour offerings require oil and frankincense? But there is the mincha of the sinner, meaning if someone commits certain sins, like for example, they go into the base of Mikdash when they're tamei, or they swear falsely regarding knowing testimony, or they take an oath that they don't, that's a lie. The Torah says in Mikra, hey, that if he cannot afford the 2 turtle doves, then the Rahman Torah says in Mikra, he brings a flour offering, and it says, Lo yosem ala shemen b'leitin le'levaina. Does not put on oil, not put on frankincense. So how can you tell me kol ha'manach is doing this, except for that of the minchas seite? It's not true. There's also the minchas chayte. Says the Gemara, this is what the Mishnah was saying. In other words, we were not saying just independent things. We were wrapping it together. Meaning, there was 2 statements our Mishnah said that are included in this one statement. Kol ha'manachas to in the shemen levaina. That's one thing we said. All menachas require oil and frankincense, and the other statement of the Mishnah, ubois menachitin, and they come from wheat, and ubois soilis, and they come from the refined flour. In other words, that there's none that require that come from chitin and come from soilis. In other words, it's going to have all of these characteristics, but minchas chayte, the sinner's flour offering, you're right, although it also does not require shemen levaina, but at least comes from wheat and it comes from refined flour. Let's say, let's contrast that with the omer offering. Although it comes from barley, you're right, it's not coming with the chitin, but tuna shemen levaina, it brings oil and frankincense, and it comes from the refined barley flour. But v'zu, that's what we're saying. But this one of the Sotah, ain't tuna loy shemen v'loy levaina, doesn't require oil, not frankincense, a bum and a saich, and then it comes from barley, bar kemach, and it comes from coarse flour. So that's what the Mishnah meant to say, meaning to say you're going to have either or. Every one of our menachas are going to have at least either shemen levaina, or it's going to come from chitin, or it's going to come from the refined flour. That's what we're saying. But this one doesn't have any one of these characteristics. You're right. It's not going to have, everyone's going to have all of them, but they have at least some of them. This one doesn't have any one of them. That's what the Mishnah meant to say, what's unique about the minchas seite. Tanu learn the Brisa, I remember Shimon, this is bedinhu, shetei minchas seite tu in the shemen levaina. Really the truth is that a minchas seite, a sinner's flour offering, should require oil and frankincense. Why? Shaloi hei chayte nisker. A sinner shouldn't be gaining, to be lenient by his flour offering more than other menachas because he's a sinner. To get away with it, he has to bring a cheaper carbon. So why doesn't it require shemen levaina? We don't want that his sacrifice should be glorified by having this enrichment of the oil and the frankincense. And so to bedinner should take chatas chel. The truth is that the sin offering of eating forbidden fast, which Rashi tells us every chatas is called a chatas chel, because it's after the isra of eating chelav, that it says after the parsha of chatas. So when you want to say generic chatas for any sin, you call it a chatas chelav. Really, every chatas should be in the nesachim, should require the libations of the soilis for the mincha and the sarin for the keves. and you have yayin, and you have a shemen of revi'as ahin, like the way you sacrifice when you bring oil and shlam, which is, that's what I'm saying, there's flour, there's oil, there's wine. And the truth is, Chadas Chev Shiur is requiring the Sachem. In this case, and this shouldn't be gaining, that his carbon should be less than the oil and the shlamim. But why does not require, like it says in the Pasha, the Sachem, and Bamidu Tezvav Lafali Ned in the Dava, that only what comes in Ned in the Dava requires the Sachem, but Chatas Ashram that's not in Ned Dava does not require the Sachem. We just don't want that his carbon should be glorified. Now, but the Chatas and the Ashram of Metzeira, tune in the Sachem. They do require the Sachem, which is explicitly included from the Sachem in Mesechtas Menachos Daf Tzadi Aleph. Why is that? Because they don't come for sin. So therefore, even though it's a Chatas in the Ashram, which generally Chatas Ashram are for sins, Metzeira is not a sinner, and therefore doesn't require that he. Therefore, it's not a problem about glorifying, and therefore he brings the Sachem. Is that really so? A Metzeira is not for a sin. But the 7 types of sins that a person does that brings him a negav tzaras, the Gemara goes through an erech and Daf Tezayin Medalf. So why is saying a mitzvah is not a sinner and therefore it requires Shem Levainim? Says the Gemara, no hasa minige. There from his negav tzaras, the yisurim, the busha of the nega, who did kaperle, that already atones for that sin. Kimaisi carbon, when he's bringing the carbon of the asham and the chatos, lishtarui b'kachim with the kimaisi. It's just to permit him to partake of kachim that he's bringing it, because there are certain tumas that the pasuk requires an atonement for their tahara, zav and zava, yeledis, mitzaira, nazar that became tamei, but that's not for a sin per se, and therefore that chatos asham will bring the nesachim of the carbon. Now says Gemara, if that's the case, chatas nazar, a nazar that brings when he finishes his days in the naziris, he brings a chatas or ilin shlamim. To unen nesachim should also require nesachim lefisha in the baalchet. That's also not for a sin. It's taka nedam naziris. Says the Gemara, but some of the Kabbalahs are kapper. That no, he holds the Kabbalahs are kapper. That he says nazar namechetu. A nazar is a sinner because he's holding himself back from wine, and therefore, according to the one who's saying that the pshat why you don't bring by a chatas is because you don't want to be that the carbon of a chayte should be mahuda. That's the same thing by a nazar is also considered a sinner because he refrained from the wine. Now he said in the Mishnah, and he says, Kishem v'chulu, he says, just like her actions were the actions of a behema, so too is going to be her carbon is going to be like the carbon of a behema, which we bring from barley and coarse barley. Now Tanya learned the Brisa that Amalahan Rabbi Lil Chachamim. This same Rabbi Lil we learned in the Brisa. He said to the sages, Seifrim, Tamid Chachamim, Hinichuli, leave me v'aderashena kimen chaymer. I'm going to expound it like a chaymer. What's a chaymer? Rashi is a button, which is made out of gold. Which that's how you close the two collars as to beautify it. So you take this button and you close it. It says, Mamash going to like put it all together. It's Mamash like you close it up. It's going to be like a. What does that mean? It says, he says, because the Shama that made the comment, Rabbi Musa says, I heard him Rameir who said, which this was brought in the first packet of Chesem Beis regarding this halacha midish ademaydid, the measurement that a person measures, that's how he gets measured back. That he hechalat madani olam. She fed him the delicacies of the world. Her man that she was mizana with. Lefika karbona ma'achalem, and therefore her carbon is animal food, the opposite. So Amalei said to him, "Hatena chashira." That's very well a wealthy woman. She put out for him who knows what spread. But Aniya, a pauper that she didn't have to feed him, Adanim, Michael, what are you going to say? Why does she have to bring Michael Behema? It's not the opposite of what she did for him. So says the Gemara, no, Ella rather, Kishem Shemaseh Maseh Behema, just like her actions were animals' actions, because she was mafkar herself, a tashmish for someone that's not her partner. Which, like the Maral says, that the ultimate chumrius, the ultimate ma'aseh chamor is arayis, is being mezana, is the opposite of tzura, of a form of eloikiyis, of spirituality, where you have your purpose, your destiny, your mate, your partner, and therefore it's just like she did a ma'aseh behema, kach karban ma'achal, so to her carbon is going to be ma'achal behema. That's to say midish adamaydid, and therefore that's her carbon made out of barley. So we continue with the theme of the procedure, the process over here of drinking the meis item. So says the Mishnah Hayamevi. So again, we spoke about how she brought her mincha from home, and it was made out of barley. Moreover, Hayamevi, so the kohen would bring piyale. There's a cup of water, shalcheres, which the cup was made out of earthenware. V'nois natecha, and he would put inside of it chatzi log mayim and akira, half a log of water from the water basin that was there in the Azar, like it says in Bamidbar, hey, Mayim Kadeshim, holy waters. Now, holy is only if it was sanctified in a vessel, as taught in the Sefer. So it must be from the Kir. He says, no, not a half a log, it was only a revius, a quarter of a log. Moreover, continues the Mishnah, he explains, the Tana explains, just like Rabbi Yehuda minimizes, B'ksav, and how much you have to write on the scroll, which we're going to see on the Mishnah Daf Yud Zayin and Aleph. So over here regarding the water, he's also minimizing that he doesn't require half a log, he only requires a quarter of a log. Continues the Mishnah, Nichnes leheichel, so the Kohen would go into the sanctuary, upon the limini, we go to the right side. Now there was an area over there that was recognizable from all the other tiles of the heichel, was an alama squared, and there was a tablet of marble, and there was a ring attached to that tile to grab a hold of the ring to pick it up from the other tiles which were all covered in marble stone. When he would lift it up, and he would take the earth from beneath that tile, and he would put that earth into the cup of water that it could be visible on the water itself. Meaning you have to put in a certain amount that you could see and it would be recognizable on the water. Like it says in the Pasuk Midbar, it says when the offer mishkan, that from the earth that's going to be in the ground of the mishkan, the Kohen will take v'nosen el hamayim, and he put it to the water. Meaning, from the fact that it doesn't say v'nosen b'mayim, puts it in the water, ella, rather it says el hamayim, sounds like that it should not get absorbed inside of it, and you should be able to see the water, and therefore that's how much earth has to be put into the water. Now, Talmud the Brayta elaborates, Pilei shecheres chadasha. Rabbi Shloimy says that this earthenware cup has to be new. It says, my time Rabbi Shloimy, what's the reason Rabbi Shloimy that it has to be new? Because Gama kli kli mi mitzayra, as it says shava, the word kli from mitzayra. Ma'alahal necheres chadasha, just like if they buy the mitzayra to be new earthenware, Afkan cheres chadasha also over here has to be new earthenware. It says Gama v'hasam and olan, hiding the mitzayra has to be new earthenware. Because the Chsiv says supposed to be ikara. It says v'shachat is a tzipar achas kli cheres, that one of the procedures of the mitzayra, when he would start his 7 days, he would slaughter one of the birds, el kli cheres, to the earthenware vessel, al mayim chayim, on living waters. Okay, so you see in that pasuk compares the vessel to the water. Ma mayim chayim, just like living waters mean shalei nes ben malacha, meaning that no malacha was ever done with it, because it says chayim, living, of kli shalei nasa ben malacha. So to also the vessel that no malacha was done with it. And just like over there means a new earthenware vessel, so too over here, the word kli tells it has to be a new earthen vessel. Says, wait a second, if you're comparing it to there, then imalahan, just like with the mitzayra, mayim chayim has to be living waters. I've come so to over here, the way to say there should be mayim chayim living waters, and we're not. You said you take it from the kiyar. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, that you're asking according to him. Hachinami, you're right. He requires living waters for the Sotah, because yes, you take it from the kiyar, but we know that in general, Rabbi Shmuel says the Rabbi Yechanan, make here the kiyar waters. Rabbi Shmuel says, Mei ma'ayin hein. They were spring waters, and therefore they were chayim. That's what makes them living waters. When they say no, they say no, it's from other waters. Meaning, if you want to put mikvah water, put gathered water into the kiyar, you're allowed to do it. But like Rabbi Shmuel, that makes sense because it is exactly like Rabbi Shmuel says, which we're learning out from there, because he also holds it has to be mayim chayim, which is what the kiyar waters were. But says Gemara, wait a second. You could refute this Gzeir of Rabbi Shmuel that's learning out the word kli by the Sotah from the word kli by mitzayra. Why could you refute it? Because ma'al mitzayra, what we find by mitzayra, that maybe they were machmer, has to be a new earthenware vessel. Shekin toin eitz erez. There's many different things that it has chumras. Of course, the cedar wood, the ezav, and the hyssop, the shnei telas, and the red string, and therefore maybe its vessel has to be new. What do you say by saying it doesn't require all these things? Maybe it doesn't have to be a new vessel. So Marabba Makra says the pasuk says b'kli cheres. When it talks about the word over here by the Sotah, it says in the earthenware vessel, which means kli shemati l'chokvar, means a vessel I already spoke to you once before. That's what Rabbi understands, because he holds it should have said v'lo kli cheres v'nas mayim. You take an earthenware vessel and put water in it. What's big kli cheres? Sounds like one that was already mentioned once before somewhere else, which the Torah is saying that here it should be that vessel like I told you in that other place, which weird to say the other place, which is by mitzayra, and just like over there, it's b'kli cheres. So to over here has to be the same kli cheres, which has to be new. Now Amar Rabba says, Lo Shana, we didn't learn the Rabban in the Mishnah that said that this earthenware vessel they hold could even be old, doesn't have to be new. Is Elish Leinas Akbu Panav. Only that the surface has not become blackened by being used over the fire. They who hold that it doesn't have to be new, but they would agree that if it's black in its face, it's going to be invalid. Says Imam Maitan, what's the reason? Because dum yidamaim has to be similar to the water, which is that even though they don't learn out from Itzaira, but however, from itself they learn out, because the vessel of Sotah, they learn out from the waters of the Sotah. Now, although the waters of the Sotah are not chayim, because they validate in the kir even other waters, it doesn't have to be spring waters. However, just like the water cannot have been used and changed from what it was, because then it wouldn't be mayim, has to be that the vessel also didn't change, and therefore even they would agree that it cannot be a blackened out old earthenware vessel. It could be old, it's just not blackened out. But Rav had the following question. What happens if nisachmu? What happens if they blackened it, but it was put back into a fiery furnace of the potters, which they heat up the pots of and make a new one out of it. With the slab numau, and it was whitened. You did libun, you burnt it out, and now it's like new. What's the question? So the Gemara says, do we say keeping the itchu? Once it was rejected, it's rejected. I don't know. No, maybe keeping the hod. Since it's back, it's back. So maybe it would be like new. Says Gemara Toshmat's being a right from the following brayso. Lazami says it's eres ve'ezav v'shnei talas. These ingredients that you have to use by the Mitzayra, shehivshel ben kuposil achayrev. If let's say you used it like a string to throw your box behind you, psulin, they're invalid. Now, as Rashi points out, from the fact that it doesn't say because shenasi ben malacha, the malacha was done with them. Obviously, we're not particular about the malacha. We're particular about the change, because now that you threw it over your back like a string, they got bent in carrying a load with this, let's say, this red string. Says the Gemara, v'hahasam hadri mifshati, but over there, you could go and straighten it out. So why does that make it invalid? Obviously because keeping the itchu, even though you can make it back to what it normally was. So that's to answer our question here. Even though you go and you whiten it out and you make this bowl like new, it's going to be invalid. So the Gemara, no, it's not a right, because hasan the ikla fiklufe. There, by carrying a heavy load, whatever it is, the cedar wood or the hyssop or the red string, they're going to peel, which that's a change that doesn't go back. And therefore that's what becomes invalid. But if it could go back, we have not answered the question, maybe that would be valid. So we said in the Mishnah, the nechnes lahechel, the kohen will go into the hechel, upana liminoi, and as the picture illustrates, he would go to the right, v'chulu, etc., and that's where he would have this tunnel, and he would lift it up, he would take out some earth over there, and put it into the bowl of water. Says Gemara, my time, what's the reason why his daf could go to the right? So there's a well-known halacha, damamau. Like the master says, the Gemara in Yomei brings Daf Nanches, the Gemara in Zevachim says in Daf Samach Beis, Kol pinoi sha'ata poine, any turn that you're going to turn, so the halacha is that lo yu ela derech yamin, should only be to the right. And that the Gemara learns out over there from Painim of the 12 Bakr by the Yamshal Shleima, that it goes around in the counterclockwise, and therefore you're going to go around to the right. Now, the Mishnah said, Malkam Hayisham Amma B'chulu. So there was an area over there, that was an Amma squared, and that was had a ring, and they would pick it up, and that's how they would go ahead and get the earth. Now, turn around in the Braisa that elaborates, and it says in the Pasuk, Umina Ofer Ashayiyah. The Pasuk says that the Kohen takes holy waters in the earthenware vessel, and from the earth that will be Bakarka HaMishkan, Yikach HaKoyim Enosan El Hamoin. So, says the Braisa, the Yochel, you would think that Yisakin Mibachut V'yachnes. You would think that, okay, you could take any earth, prepare it outside, and bring it into the Heichel. No, it says Bakarka HaMishkan. It says on the ground of the Mishkan. Okay, now Ibakarka HaMishkan, if we had the pasuk that it says in the ground of the Mishkan, and it didn't say Asher Yiheh, like we just quoted from the earth that will be. So Yochel, you would think that if you don't find any soft earth to take, that Yachber Bekardumais, you got to start, hacking away with hatchets, because it's got to be Bekarka Mishkan. That says no, Asher Yiheh, that will be there. So Haketzad, what does that mean? Yesham, if there is earth over there, it's in Have. So go ahead and bring. Ein Sham, if there isn't, 10 Sham. Then you could actually put over there on the ground and then go and take from it and put it inside the water. So that's how this Tanakama is explaining. Yiyah means it could be. It's not there now. You could place it there. If it already is, then you can take Bekarka Mishkan. So that's one of the two. Those are the two options that you have. Tani Yidich, we learn another brayso that disagrees on this first brayso, and it's a Machlekes Tanoim, as we learn that it's a Machlekes Tanoim, and the previous brayso, like we'll see at the end, holds like Isa b'Menachem, and this brayso holds otherwise. He darshans like this. Says, Umina afash yibagoymer, from the earth that will be, etc., which it says over there, b'mishkan. Now, from, like Rashi explains on the fact that it doesn't say mikarka mishkan yikach, from the ground of the mishkan he should take. Obviously not particular, rather only that you should just bring it into the heichel. So Mlamed, this teacher, that he was able to prepare it on the outside and just bring it into the heichel and then put it into the water. He does not have to put it down on the ground of the heichel. Because it just says, Mishkan, it says from the earth it will be in the Mishkan. Now, what do you do with Bekarka HaMishkan? In other words, so what's that coming to teach us? Since you tell me learn from Ashiyah that you don't have to take it from the ground, so what does the end of the pasuk say? That Ashiyah Bekarka HaMishkan, on the ground of the Mishkan. I thought you could just prepare it outside and bring it inside. So East Ben Yehuda says, La Bekarka is a continuum of Tezayim and Aleph, of Shiloi, Noiv, V'givin, Abayse, Lamim. Meaning that's just coming to include the real estate, the property, the area of Shiloi, V'givin, Abayse, Lamim, because this pasuk is about the Mishkan, which was in the Midbar. How do we know all these other Batei Mikdash are also going to be valid to do the Mesaita? That's what it says, but it doesn't have to be in the ground. You can prepare it on the outside, just bring it into the Mishkan. That's how Isi ben Yehuda holds. But Isi ben Menachem, like Rashi says, he's the Tan of the first brayso. So he says, no, Einay Tzachich. You don't have to include the Beis Olam, the Beis HaMikdash, with the word Karka, because the Mabit to Mekala, if a light Tumah, meaning to go in with a Tumah Sarkof into the Beis HaMikdash, which doesn't have Misad Bezin, only has Kalas. The Pasuk did not differentiate between the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan, which it says by the Pasha Paraduma two Psukim, Kes Mikdash Hashem Timei, it says as Mishkan Hashem Timei, to tell you they're both the same. So by Thomas Eishes Ish Chamura Lekoshkin, so by the Tumah of a defilement of a married woman, which is severe, isn't all the more so that the Beis HaMikdash and Mishkan are the same to check out the woman and to get rid of these wicked people from our midst? So it became out Tamal Bekarka Mishkan. So what are we learning from the word Bekarka Mishkan? That's the teacher Shelo Yavim Yitech Kupasai. That you should not bring it from your box into the vessel and then just bring it into the heichel. No, we have to take it from the ground. If you don't have it on the ground, you come and you bring it over there and you place it there and then you take it. And that's what it's going to be. Asher yiyeh, and you're also going to fulfill Bekarka, like we said before, meaning it's going to be one or the other. But that was the time of the first place that Rashi says, as Yisi ben Menachem, he says, no, it's got to be on the ground. Either it's there, that's Bekarka Mishkan, or you got to bring it and put it there, that's Asher yiyeh. But you can't just bring like the other Tana saying, Isi ben Yehud, who is saying that, yeah, no problem, you just bring it in. So I said Bekarka Mishkan. That's just to say other grounds like the Mishkan will also work. That's the machlekes regarding this halacha of taking the earth from the floor. Is it enough to just bring it in if you don't have earth over there, or do you have to actually bring it and put it on the ground and then take it from the floor? Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.